Hello and welcome to the module titled Orienting the Reader, which is basically how can you go about helping the reader understand as quickly as possible, what the point of your article is and guiding the reader to making your point and getting to your point successfully in a way that doesn't confuse the reader, basically starting off on the right foot. Starting with this module, you'll notice that the videos will get a little bit shorter because now we're going to transition into me providing a lot of the input about the course and more of the course content coming from you in the form of writing. So I'll be doing less of the work in terms of make me talking, and you'll be doing more of the work in terms of you writing. Although, of course, there will be more work for us later as we read what you write. All right, with no further ado, what is this about? Well, as I mentioned, um, one of the first things we look at when we pick up an article is um, the introduction, and before that, the title and the abstract. And we're going to look at why uh, the abstract in particular can be important in an article in this video. And related to that, what the naysayer, you may remember that character from a previous video, what he has to say about this as well, what her or his role as a naysayer may be when thinking about IMRAD and in particular the abstract section. So you'll recall that the common argument structure or general rhetorical structure in academic discourse is this notion of they say and I say. First, starting with the they say, um, what what has been established in your field, in your discipline, and then getting to what your main point is, what you have to say about all of that. And you have to establish what conversation you're entering into. What thesis are you responding to? And this is important to do in the introduction section, but is also arguably important to do right off the bat from the title, as we'll see later, and the abstract. Here is an abstract from a student this is a pseudonym, and it's a good example. Very simple. It's good because it's straight to the point. It starts with epilepsy affects cognition, and many studies show that one of its most affected functions is memory. However, little is said about the executive functions, which are essential for carrying out activities of daily living and problem solving. The present study aims to describe executive functions in adults with refractory epilepsy, comprehending the components of inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. So this has a lot of the ingredients that might be considered important for a good abstract. You have the territory that's been established, so move one, and you have a gap that is signaled here. So the first sentence presenting what has already been said, that they say, and the second sentence kind of establishing the niche in a very succinct way, as you can see. This is the author showing that there is a crowded train car, which is all of the literature has been published in that area, and with that move to saying, please make way, this is me saying, this is my space that I'm going to create. And that's all done in an abstract. In addition, I've asked you to consider in another module what your naysayer might be of your research or the article or chapter that you intend to write. And so with the same abstract, the same author says that a naysayer might question the instruments we used for the neuropsychological evaluation. As this research is self-funded, we had to choose from instruments that were publicly available. However, one could argue that other instruments were better suited for our purpose. I'm sure that this is not the only limitation of this article, and as we will discuss in a later module, the naysayer is not only about limitations, but having these kinds of points in mind can be crucial to developing your article in a way that doesn't raise objections unnecessarily as you write. In this case, it's a methodological consideration, and as we saw in the second module, one of the common reasons that can contribute to a rejection of an article is problems in the methods section. Number of issues, which we will also deal with in this course. And here the person has this in mind. And so with that in mind, knowing what the limitations are, that can help in structuring an article. Okay, well, it's good to know that it's important to realize that such limitations are okay. That is a normal part of the writing process, and it's good that you admit it to yourself and be transparent uh, with the reviewers and with the reader, because there's no such thing as a perfect study. And again, transparency is something that will actually strengthen your article. So revealing limitations actually can add strength as opposed to weaken your arguments. Okay, so these arguments, these limitations and considerations that need to be kept in mind as you think of the naysayer will clearly come into play not only in the method section, but also in all of the sections of your article. Um, it's something that you have to kind of keep in mind. That naysayer will be ubiquitous, or should be always present as you write. A few examples of what I'm talking about. So here, let's look at this statement. There has been no research on this topic so far in the literature. I've seen similar statements in manuscripts I have received to review. The importance of this subject has already been well established. The results of this research conclusively prove that the participants improved. Kind of awkward wording in that last one, but all three represent the kind of statements that I've read in manuscripts I have received for review, in which I thought, that really should have been worded in a different way. So with this one, there has been no research on this topic so far in the literature. I've seen authors, I've suggested authors, and I've seen authors write that in a different way that doesn't unnecessarily raise objections with a naysayer, with things like, to the best of our knowledge, there is little to no research on this topic so far. So it is a hedged statement. The same thing with this one. The importance of this subject has already been well established. Um, well, that may be true. And if that appears in the abstract immediately, uh, and I'm referring now specifically to the abstract in both of these statements, if either of these appeared in the abstract, immediately it would already set the naysayer to sensitive mode, thinking, okay, well, let's see if, with the first statement, there has been no research on this topic so far in the literature, immediately could cause the naysayer to think, okay, well, I can think of a few studies that actually are similar. Or I'll go to Google Scholar and prove you wrong. With the second one, that may be an okay statement to say in an abstract, but immediately the author would have to either supply a good list of authors who have discussed this importance, or if the author doesn't, the naysayer might say, okay, well, you need to actually establish this importance, not just make the statement without backing it up. And the third one, the results of this research conclusively prove that the participants improved. This one I see particularly the problematic word here is especially the word prove, and I've seen this especially among non-native speakers, maybe not recognizing how loaded that term, that word can sound, prove, because especially if you're working in a social science, it's difficult to conclusively prove anything. As if you have irrespective of your methodology, it's difficult to generalize anything conclusively. You can make very strong assertions, and so I've seen authors, change this to something like, the results of this research provide compelling evidence or strongly suggest that the participants approved. Again, kind of a hedged statement rather than unnecessarily raising the objection of a naysayer right off the bat. And all three of these statements could appear in an abstract, and so you have to be aware of this. So we've talked about creating a research space in the introduction, and today we're going to talk about how you can already signal your research space in the abstract, and keeping this person in mind, keeping that naysayer in mind as you do so. All right. So this is an article that you have seen already in a previous video, previous module about the burden of writing research among Mexican scientists, and and what I want to show you is that uh, if you look at this, it's a pretty good example of how this abstract does a kind of cars coverage in it, so the authors create a research space in it, and IMRAD is also present in this. So here in basically the second sentence, um, territory is established. Um, Previous qualitative research has shown that scientists writing English in a previous language face difficulties. So that's in one sentence, the second sentence, in the first part of that sentence. And then in the second part of that sentence, after the conjunction but, has not established parameters for the degree of this difficulty. So that but is basically signaling the move to, establishing the niche in one sentence. So you have move one and move two in one sentence here. But you also have, as you may have identified, move one, which is the establishing a territory, or rather, uh, sorry, you also have a portion of this abstract which represents kind of what could be called the introduction, because you have cars, the territory, and the niche. And then right now you can also probably see that there is an a method section as well, which talks about participants and what they did, what tools were used. And that's right there. And then you can see even the word results, and that would be your R. So we have I, introduction, method, and results. And And you have after introduction, after method, after results. Then you have the author talking about uh, what the findings suggest, what to do with this information, what is the upshot of all of this research, and there's your D. So here your you have your cars and IMRAD all in one abstract. And not all abstracts do this. Not all abstracts necessarily need this. And 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 different disciplinary areas, even different journals in subdisciplines will have different expectations. But it's good, in principle, to know about this or be aware of this if you have to write an abstract or when you write an abstract, because even though you might see abstracts that differ from the structure, what this abstract does is immediately orient the reader. It shows the reader where the author is going, what it intends to do right away. And this is important because that way, as long as the reader does look at the abstract before they start reading the introduction, they have kind of a roadmap before them, even if they feel that's for whatever reason a bit lost as they proceed through the article. Having read the abstract, they know more or less what their heading is, and that can reduce from some frustration, and also maybe even help reducing any objection from the naysayer. And so this having in the abstract clarity on what you intend to do and why you did it and what you did and what its implications are can help a lot. And this very first question that we see as reviewers, this one here, does the manuscript contain new and significant information? If that's already in the abstract, that helps a lot. And as you can see here, it's something that a lot of journals want as well. Clearly and accurately describing the content of the article, not something that differs or a promise that is not delivered on. And in here, even in the abstract, you can have this right here, a concise statement about what the problem is. All of that can be, most of the questions that you see here before you can be already covered in the abstract to some degree, and therefore you should be careful in the way you structure it, thinking of it as an important ally. So, as we've seen before, and just to kind of recap before we move on, move one is where authors establish territory, where they mention what the conversation they're entering is. Move two, whether it be in the introduction or in an abstract, is where they would establish a niche. And three, they occupy that niche, talking about what the gap is, or how it was filled. But what I see and what a lot of journal reviewers will complain about is when one or more of these is missing. And we saw this before with the Eliana Irano research, where often there is a move two missing, but often other ones are missing as well. And so I just want to show you in practice what that looks like. So here's an abstract that is not a real abstract, but it's one that's adapted from a real one. So there is a growing concern that people are not getting enough sleep. Moreover, there is increasing evidence of an association between sleep and adult health. However, there is still little research on how much sleep older adults need. This retrospective cohort study examined reported sleep duration and possible associations with health concerns. Results show that older adults generally require less sleep than younger adults. Okay, so here you have you kind of move one there, the territory, and that sort of provides important justification for establishing the importance of the research area, and what conversation you're entering. And then after that, the however signaling the move to, so the gap. Okay. Now, what would that look like if one of those elements was missing? And as I mentioned, the Irana research shows that especially remove 2 is missing. So that's the niche. If you take that away, you take your research space away. And it would look like this. There is a growing concern that people are not getting enough sleep. Moreover, there is increasing evidence of an association between sleep and adult health. This retrospective cohort study examined reported sleep duration among the elderly. Um, and so the link between one and the other is somewhat precarious. And also, that's less compelling to see why this research is required in the first place. I've also seen very often a move 1 missing. And so what that basically looks like is just a person saying what they did. This retrospective cohort study examined reported sleep duration among the elderly and possible associations with health concerns. Results show that older adults generally require less sleep than younger adults. Yes, such abstracts can get published. However, you don't do yourself any favors by not showing why uh, the research area, your particular topic is important, and what gap you're filling. So basically, such an abstract makes it more difficult to sell what your research is. Remember that the more you can establish a problem that needs to be worked on, and that you are trying to work on that problem, the greater you establish that, the more the reader will want to listen to what you have to say about it. In the next video, we're going to look at the importance of considering your title carefully as a very important and often overlooked step in orienting the reader.